Want to know how elite tax advisors win the due diligence game to satisfy ultra high net worth clients who expect the very best? Welcome to the Due Diligence Project podcast, where you get a chance to learn from the elite CPAs, virtual family office professionals, and tax specialists who are doing just that. We'll uncover their insider secrets on how they are dominating their competition, vetting new ideas, and supercharging their due diligence process to deliver extraordinary results. Bringing his 25 plus years of experience with top tax professionals across the country, please welcome your host, Alex Sunkin.
All right, welcome to the Due Diligence Project podcast. Today's guest is Matthew Fargo. He's an elite virtual family office, elite CPA firm out of Boulder, Colorado. They serve ultra high net worth business owners. I know they've got some billionaire clients. And welcome to the Due Diligence Project podcast, my friend. How are you today?
Good, Alex. How you doing?
I am doing awesome. So what we want to do today is really dive into your head, because a lot of people aren't familiar with what virtual family offices do, what elite CPA firms really do internally in terms of how you do due diligence, how you create massive value for your high net worth clients. And we want to learn a little bit more about you and the work you're doing. So let's just start with, how did you get started and why did you become a CPA, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I can talk a little bit about where I came from. And so I went to CU Boulder.
Okay.
I grew up in Alaska and moved to Arizona when I was in high school. I was excited to get back to the mountains, so moved to University of Colorado Boulder for college, which was a lot of fun, and was a fraternity president. So all the background you'd expect from a CPA, right? I did watch a lot of Star Trek though. So I think it was by my sophomore year. I met my wife in college, and we actually met freshman year, started dating sophomore year. But I remember visiting her at her house in Scottsdale, Arizona, and her dad had a pretty cool car. And I was like, "What does your dad do?" They had a really nice house in Paradise Valley, and she goes, "Oh, he's a CPA." And I was like, "I wonder what that is." So I started looking into it, and then I changed my major to accounting. So it's really that simple. I didn't plan my entire life around it. But I had some amazing professors in college. So as soon as I changed my major, started taking some of those classes, it was super engaging. And I've always liked logic and how the logic flows together. And so I started my career out at PricewaterhouseCoopers. I interned there my junior year of college. Worked on Vail Resorts and a couple other engagements that were pretty cool. And then started with PricewaterhouseCoopers right after I graduated in 2003. And then earned my CPA license over the next couple of years. Left there in 2007, went to a firm called CBIZ, Meyerhoff McCann, and spent a number of years there. I was primarily working with publicly traded companies. I was an audit guy. So I primarily worked with publicly traded companies and companies that were preparing to do an IPO. And I got to be one of their experts on complex equity, complex debt. I was dealing with a lot of really interesting transactions. Left there in 2010, kind of right after the recession, along with my business partner, Chester Kurtz. And the idea was we saw some things we didn't love during the recession, and the way we were running the firm, and we had some different ideas about how we thought a CPA firm should run and some of the things we wanted to accomplish. And so we left to start Kurtz Fargo. It was just the two of us at the time, no clients, no nothing. I had a 6-month-old, and we basically just had to make it work, right? And I remember measuring out Chester's basement, trying to decide, if I could move in there if it didn't all work out. And so the goal was to work though with companies that were still very complex. Chester and I worked on a lot of complex stuff. So we didn't want to start a small CPA shop and do a bunch of 1040s and that's it, that were real simple. We wanted to focus on working with venture capital, private equity backed companies that had complex situations, the business owners that were related to those companies. And then it expanded far beyond that because we realized what we were doing around planning, strategy, really getting into the nitty gritty, doing a lot of consulting around debt and equity and those types of things. And the relationships we had built with attorneys and other CPA firms throughout the country. We were bringing a completely different product to the table than most of our competitors, even at the national level. And so the firm's expanded well beyond that now. I think we're about 32 or 33 people. We've hired a couple more people this last week. So
that's awesome.
You know, 10 years into it.
Yeah, no, I remember meeting you, and I feel like I've known you for 10 years, but we've definitely met after, you know, a little bit later than that. But I remember you and Chester coming to one of our live events, right? Back when we used to actually do live full auditorium events, you know, before we transitioned to our virtual world and to our virtual family office academies, and now the Due Diligence Project Summit, which we had over 550 elite CPA firms and family offices join us virtually. But I remember meeting you at our Advanced Tax Planning Institute. And one of the things that really popped out about you and Chester was just your unique skill set. You had this dynamic skill set of personality, and now I didn't even know you were an audit guy. I want to know why you transitioned into tax. That's a question we'll talk about later. But one of the things that was super impressive about you was the due diligence, the way you were doing due diligence at the Advanced Tax Planning Institute, meaning you were really diving in and asking some powerful questions. In fact, I brought some other CPAs and I brought some attorneys to have a little discussion out in the hallway. And I just remember, based on your questions and feedback about a couple of our strategies, we actually made some modifications to it and uncovered some due diligence there, which really kind of got me excited about building the due diligence project, because it really showed me that when we gather, you know, all-star type players, elite CPAs, elite family office leaders, elite specialists, elite tax attorneys, and we all bring them together, some amazing things happen in those side conversations. And so I want to talk to you about, how do you do due diligence? Because every one of our members does due diligence their own way. And it's really, really important to have A-plus players as part of our community. And we look at you as one of those A-plus players. But talk to us about how you personally get comfortable to get that clarity and confidence to complete your due diligence before you bring something significant to one of your biggest clients.
Sure. You know, coming from the audit side, there's a concept in assurance services called independence, and most CPAs know about that. But it's a really big deal in audit. It's less of an issue in tax for the most part, but that's always kind of been at my core, is that concept of independence. And so you're always trying to bring the best option to your client without any reason for you to bring that option other than you truly think it's the best option for the client. And so coming from that perspective, and also coming from a national firm environment, you're coached to consult. If you don't know the answer, don't fake it, go figure it out, right? And ask smart people. And the further up the chain you go in public accounting, the more you realize that there's not code to read about everything, right? There is not a bright line answer to every single issue. And so the only way you can really get yourself comfortable is by first understanding the thing that you're dealing with, whatever the strategy is, whatever the equity instrument that you're trying to develop is. It doesn't matter. You first have to understand it. And as you're going through the process, you try to figure out, well, where are the risks here? Yeah. You know, does this make sense on the surface? If it doesn't make sense on the surface, off, right out of the way, water away, right? It doesn't make sense. Right. And once you get down to it, you say, okay, I think this does make sense. There's a lot of interesting things here, but I think I found a couple of crux items that I've got to solve for. And then you start reaching out to the people that you know that are really smart. And so we tend, with tax strategies that we learn at different trainings, we send people all over the country for training every year, and they bring back interesting ideas. And those ideas that we decide are worth looking into, we start reaching out a lot of times first to family offices, if we're looking at a tax strategy for an individual. And the reason we do that is they have in-house attorneys most of the time, and they're really bright. They're used to looking at different complex strategies, and they're not billing by the hour. So they're more than happy to look at something with you and see, and then you can kind of test your thought process, you know, and you start throwing darts at the board and see if things work out. And then the next step from there is once you feel comfortable with your kind of inner circle that you've got something that holds water, then you reach out to the attorneys that are in public practice. in other CPA firms. We're part of an international association of firms. And so we have some extremely large firms in Atlanta, New York, California, with a lot of really smart people. And so we'll toss those ideas out to them and see if they have any feedback. And once we get enough feedback, and we've done our own research as well, we can feel confident that what we're bringing to the table can be presented to the client in such a way that we can really outline all the risks and the benefits so that they can make an informed decision. And that's the goal. We try not to get married to any type of strategy. Our job is to present the strategy to the client, help them understand how it could be useful to them, and then answer any questions they have, and then help them implement if they want to. And if they don't, that's okay.
What's really, really cool is, you guys were already set up. You've already outsourced a lot of your BNC clients. When we met you, a lot of the CPA firms we meet have, 1,000, 2,000 clients or 1,500 clients that, the majority are BNC clients, and then their AA plus clients are their big clients. And we encourage them to outsource their BNC clients, focus on their A clients. You already came to us with only A clients, which means you have all this time and attention to invest in due diligence and all these different pieces, which is very, very difficult. So the fact that this is how you handle due diligence, and how we have a community now of over 550 firms, not all of them like you, some of them are KPMG, other Deloitte, other former maybe family offices. You guys have a family office structure, but then you also support family offices as part of your CPA tax planning practice. So we have over 500 people are doing due diligence on the same strategies, introducing their other strategies. And we bring that to you. You're going to do that, your own version of that due diligence, before you come back to us and say, hey, Alex, I really like that, or I have some more questions that. So imagine that combined with 500 other firms that are doing the same thing. And basically what we have is this Amazon style peer-reviewed system where we can really identify what's good, what's better, what's best, having a bunch of CPAs handle that due diligence like that. Does that bring you more confidence and clarity, being able to lean on the due diligence project outside of just leaning on your own shoulders and the capacity of your firm?
Yeah, of course. I mean, anytime you're dealing with complex situations, you want to get as much information as you possibly can. And I sit in, I'm part of an investment group that's got a lot of really intelligent people in the room. And one of the things I always keep in the back of my head is, when I'm listening to a pitch, is I know I'm surrounded by a lot of smart people, but am I being subjected to groupthink right now? Right. And so I always have to focus in and say, okay, what due diligence needs to happen on this particular investment or this particular structure? And I look at tax situations the same way. I think most CPAs think the same way, right? So when a person comes in, a tax attorney or somebody else that has some reason to benefit from that strategy, whether it be fees or whatever it is, presents it, you immediately have a little light go off in the back of your head and say, well, I don't know if I can trust what they say, but let's look into this. And to have my own network looking at something hard, but also my network might have not come across that. And so there are certain strategies that pop up in New York or California, and then they kind of trickle their way across the country, right? To be able to reach out to a large group like you have put together of high quality firms that are also looking at the same issues, and we can ask the questions, we can have those in-depth discussions, and then pop it back out to our network. You can get a really solid feeling for what a strategy is bringing to the table and what the risks are. And I think that's invaluable, especially for firms that aren't used to consulting. I think that's the really hard thing for most small firms is, if you didn't come from a big firm environment, you're not used to reaching out to other people and asking them questions. Usually it's just within your four walls of your office.
Right now we're living in this environment where there's more risk than we thought there was. Decisions, it's like you're helping decision makers, business owners make so many decisions in a row. You make 10 good decisions in a row, you make a couple bad ones, all of a sudden, boom, everything's going sideways. So let's talk about your ability to help your business owner clients or your affluent families make these key decisions. Let's talk about some of the wins that you help them to create, and how important having, because these affluent business owners you're serving, they are not experts in finance. They're not experts in tax. They're not experts in all this other stuff. They're experts in making and selling widgets. and they're counting on you and your firm and the support system that's beneath your firm to handle all this other stuff so they can keep the money that they're making. So let's talk about some of the wins you've helped create for them.
Sure. Well, we deal with a lot of exits.
Okay.
Our offices, our primary office is in Boulder, Colorado, right off Pearl Street Mall. So we're dealing with a lot of tech entrepreneurs, a lot of natural foods, natural products entrepreneurs that are having sizable exits. And the best situation is when we're dealing with them well before the exit occurs. And as we start to approach an exit, hopefully by that time we've been able to introduce them to, depending on the size, the right multifamily office or the right investment advisory team, and help them pull in the right attorneys. And we've kind of built up this professional services team around them that is all very comfortable with each other and is used to having regular conversations. And then we get into the planning piece, right? So now we know a transaction is going to be coming up, and we need to start thinking through what are the different opportunities that might exist. We're actually dealing with one right now for a client, and we got a little late to the game, so we can't do everything we'd want to do. But we were working on a tax plan this week for them, and we had about 4 really strong ideas. Some of them are, I would say, heavy on the administrative side. Some of them are light on the administrative side, buying things like conservation easement tax credits from the state of Colorado through a broker. Pretty simple, not out of this world complicated. It'll save you some state taxes. That's good. And then there's some other strategies that have a huge amount of savings, but there's a pretty heavy administrative burden that comes along with that. When we bring that to the client, and we're going to present it to him on Monday, actually, from knowing this guy, I have a feeling he's probably going to not want to go down the high administration side of things. And I've got other clients, on the other hand, that if there's a strategy that can be put in place and it's going to save them a little bit of money, pedal to the metal, right? But our job is to look at the situation, come up with a plan, come up with a strategy, present the ideas to them, and then they can start picking from them. Their team that we've built up for them or with them is going to look at all the different ideas. They're going to criticize or critique what's there and make sure that they have the full set of information, and the client can make an informed decision. Everybody wins, right? Regardless of what path they go down. I think with our business clients, it's a similar process, just a different focus, right? So on a business client, it's usually focused around income tax on an annual basis. So what dials do we need to be playing with every single year to make sure we're optimizing their situation? But it all falls back to planning, strategy, and communication. If you're doing those things throughout the year, you're going to be on the proactive side, and that's where the clients want you to be.
Right. And given the fact that nobody knows how many pages are in the tax code, we just added an infinite number. We don't know how many pages there are in the CARES Act. And by the way, they're making changes to the CARES Act, every week. It's like this moving target. So we have a moving target with a tax code that is massive. Tax attorneys are not allowed to solicit and market their tax planning strategies. You've got created time and space for your people in your office to go find resources, but you also went and plugged in the due diligence project, became members of the due diligence project. And so how great is it to be able just to text, call, email, and be like, hey, I've got this idea, I've got this client, it's got this fact pattern. I'm thinking it's going to be this, and this, Alex. What do you think? And quickly getting me back on the phone and discussing all that. Let's talk about that experience and how that gives you clarity and confidence with your clients.
It's a huge advantage because if you think about it, the high-end firms, we pay a lot of money for research software. And there's some tax strategies in there, but not the best ones. And there's always new ones being created. Most of the trainings you go to tend to regurgitate the same strategies over and over again. And we try to go to a lot of different trainings. If you go to in-house trainings at large firms, most people are not incentivized to come up with something new because that's dangerous. You always got to do
very risky.
You don't want to be
because due diligence is hard. Due diligence is hard, right, Matt?
It is. That's right. And there's risk associated with it, right? So, one of the unique things that I think we found with your group is that you guys are always out there looking for new strategies. And then you're finding the best people that you can find who understand those strategies, who have critiqued those strategies. And then once you figured out whether this thing holds water, you kick it out to the community for people's feedback, really. And I know for a fact that you guys have looked at certain strategies that have been offered by multiple people and kicked out certain groups that just don't run it right, that are pushing the edge too much or whatever it is. And that's been a function of the way you have built up the community. And so it's a really unique thing. I haven't seen anything else like what you guys have built.
We've just been modeling. We've been modeling the best firms in other industries, because no one in the financial services, no one in the money industry has done anything like this. But people have done this, in other industries. Blockbuster got taken out by Netflix and Amazon, right? And interesting, Amazon's taken out a lot of players like Toys R Us. And I was watching this old interview with Bezos back when he had funny looking hair, before he was worth 100 billion. He wasn't as cool as he is now. You get a lot cooler, I think, when you get some bees behind you.
Especially when he copied your haircut.
He did. He copied the haircut. Looks really cool now. But this was really interesting. So they're asking him about how he started Amazon. And I'm just like fascinated with Bezos, right? And he goes, well, and they're like, why did you start with books? And he goes, well, there's hundreds of thousands of titles of books. And that's all I had to hear. And the light bulbs just go off, because I'm thinking, what bookstore can we go to that has every single book in the universe? It doesn't exist. So he's a smart guy. He's like, I'm going to create the bookstore. The first bookstore, we just go to this one bookstore and everything's available. And what did my mind jump to? Because I follow patterns, the complexity of the tax code. I'm like, why did we start? Because we could have done the due diligence project and started with all sorts of other stuff, but we started with sophisticated tax planning, because sophisticated tax planning is so complicated. And we know that it's complicated because we see the results. Only 18% of Fortune 500 companies were able to zero out their tax return, the 500 most profitable companies in the world. And the other 82% of the most profitable companies in the world could not. So we see this huge gap just in looking at the 500 most profitable companies in the world. Less than 1 out of 5 of them can produce a beautiful tax return like your firm can, like our other members of the due diligence project can, but the other 82 can't. So this shows you there's this huge gap, and there needs to be this bridge, because no one knows how many pages in the tax code. It's constantly changing, and tax attorneys are not allowed to solicit or market their tax plans. So it's like going to find a bookstore with every book in the world and then finding your favorite book at that bookstore. That's tough. And so we built this for the same reason that Bezos built that original bookstore. Of course, we can do other things in the due diligence project besides sophisticated tax planning, but that's where we can help a firm like yours deliver massive value to your business owners. They could take that tax savings and cost savings and create more jobs, give back to the community, give back to charities, and really make the world a better place. And that's what we're trying to do on a multi-generational level. But the fact that you're plugged in and you're doing due diligence at the level that you're doing it on, just in your own firm, and adding that to the due diligence project, that makes us even more confident with what we're doing, because we're sharing all of our stuff with you and the rest of our community. So anyway, I want to thank you for what you're doing to contribute to the project. But before we take off, can you share something interesting about you that maybe your clients don't know about you? Maybe that hasn't come up in certain conversations with your clients?
Oh man, something interesting.
You're an interesting
Not
guy.
A very interesting person, I suppose.
Oh, yeah, you are.
No, I'm kidding. Well, I'll talk about what I like to do for fun. So we've got a house up in the mountains that we like to go to, and so my kids, my 2 girls, they're both on the ski team up at the Winter Park ski resort, and so we go up there every weekend in the wintertime and ski. So I try to get in. I try to get in my age every year of ski days. So we got close this year, but it shut down a little early because of COVID-19. And in the summertime, we do a lot of mountain biking. So I grew up in Alaska, like I mentioned earlier. So I'm a big outdoor sports guy. I was a mountain guide for a few years for the Boy Scouts. And, anytime I can get outdoors and do something fast and, remotely dangerous, that's fun. I enjoy that kind of stuff. It lets gets my mind off of things, and anything going slow, I just start cranking too much.
So you're
going down the hill really fast, and you're trying to avoid hitting trees or going off too big of a cliff. Can't think about anything but the next turn, or and that's fun. And I have a lot of buddies that are financial advisors and attorneys and things like that. We all get together up there, a lot of CEOs, and we're all doing it for the same reason. It's like, we can't talk about business. All we can do is like try not to fall. And that's
so at work, your job is to mitigate risk, and then you get out of the office, and it's the opposite, right? You just want to go in and do the opposite.
What we try to do. Yeah.
Well, you definitely live in the right place, and you've got a beautiful office out in Boulder. I loved my little trip out there to visit you. Looking forward to the next one, and looking forward to you visiting out here in Southern California very soon as well. Matt, thank you so much for joining us at the Due Diligence Project podcast. This was awesome. Have a great day. And I think our audience really got a chance to dive in your head and really understand how you do due diligence, how you deliver massive value to your clients. And I know your clients are extremely lucky to have you as their elite CPA and BFO. So thank you so much for joining us, my friend. Have a great one, man.
See you later.
That's all for this episode of the Due Diligence Project podcast. Be sure to visit duediligenceproject.com to access the resources we have available for qualified CPAs and family office leaders. Our mission at the Due Diligence Project is to help you deliver more significance and value to your very best clients while shifting your traditional practice into the firm of the future.